So I was a kid in the South Bronx who was left back twice in school. I was kicked out of high school. In fact, I was kicked out of one of the toughest high school, Taft High School, on 170th Street. Anybody familiar with Taft High School? Back in that, you went to Taft? When'd you go?
Back in the 60s and 70s.
All right, so I came up a little bit. When I grew up, and you know, some of my students are back there. When I grew up, I tell them the same story. When I grew up there, we had riots in the cafeteria on a regular basis. Some of my friends would rob people in the hallway. That happened on a regular basis. And why that happened is not due to, because that's the kind of people we were. That happened because that's the way our minds were programmed. Because we were told that's who we were, right? So this story is about that, right? I wanted to share my story because I wanted to show other people like me who grew up in the same neighborhoods, whether they be young people or people who are struggling or feel like they're underdogs, that there is a other side, right? There's light at the end of that tunnel, right? So if I can get through that dark time in my life, so can you. So the story is about me growing up South Bronx, religious mother, alcoholic father, and as I said, underdog, even in my community itself, because I was also a heavy kid. I was looked at by family members as well as people in my community, not being as smart, kind of slow. But as the brother read my bio, I have 3 degrees. Right? So obviously, there was something going on. I just needed the motivation and knowing that I am capable of these things, right? So I want to talk about those blocks, because one of the speakers talked about those blocks, right? Those things that block you, that you don't know that are there, right? The greatest prison. There's a preacher that I like to view on Sunday. His name is Aon Bernard. And one of the things that he talked about, one of the greatest prisons is the prison in your mind, right? It's no matter how many times I could put you behind physical bars, right? If you don't become incarcerated up here, right, you will always remain free. But if I put you in a situation or I make you believe that you are less than, because of your situation, because of the color of your skin, because of your gender, then I've already defeated you, right? So, anybody familiar with the book Art of War? Yep. Right? So there's a passage in there that says, the author says that the quickest way to defeat your enemy is to make them believe that they're already defeated before they step on the battlefield. Right? So it's not about the physical battle, it's about the mental battle. So I've already made you believe that there's no way you can win. Right? Boxers, Muhammad Ali used to do us all the time. Right? Ain't no way you can beat me. Right? There's no way. You're too slow, right? You're not as smart as me, so I'm already setting you up to fail. And it's the same thing that's going on with our community and our children right now. Right? If I already make you believe that you have lost, you're not going to compete with me, right? I have less to compete with. So let's talk about these blocks. First of all, let's look at the definition of opportunity. Even before we do that, let's look at this wall. I like symbolic things, right? When I was in school, as you heard, I was a performing arts major, also studied art itself, right? There's a lot of symbolism in art, right? So I had my daughter take this picture. And I had the graphic artist put a doorknob on a wall. What does that say to you? Who's some of my art majors and people who like examining stuff like this? What does this wall say to you?
I feel like the answer. So I look at that as you have to turn the key. The key to get in. If you don't turn the key, you're not going to get in.
Right? You're not going to get in. So somebody else give me.
You're not going to get in.
No matter how many you
times you turn it, you're not gonna get in because it's a wall.
Yeah,
It's a wall,
that's,
right?
That's a perfect definition.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, perfect
That was
definition.
exactly my point. Putting a doorknob
Perfect
on a
example.
wall, you cannot get past this. Not even if I put a
Perfect
physical
Like that.
mechanism with a key to say,
Direct.
come in. All you're gonna do is, you're not going anywhere,
Direct.
right?
Yeah,
So
perfect.
let's examine that, because this is why I put this physical wall here. So the definition of opportunity is a good chance for advancement or progress. If you open a door and it opens, you're advancing in your progress, right? But as I said, you have a wall here. Let's examine the American dream. Anybody familiar with the definition of what the American dream is? Anybody familiar with that? Okay, so let me read that to you. So, according to a great writer, American writer, in the 1930s, James Tercelo Adams, he says that the American dream, life should be better and richer, fuller for everyone, with opportunity for each according to their ability or achievement, regardless of their social class or circumstances of birth. The American dream is rooted in the Declaration of Independence, which proclaims that all men are created equal,
And a woman.
right? We're gonna get to that,
Women.
right? With the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So like the brother said, what don't you have on it? You don't have women, you don't have people of color, right? The person who wrote this was a Caucasian, right? So he wasn't talking about us in this room, right? So they've kind of forgot that. So here comes the wall, boom, right?
Yeah, they excluded.
Right, they excluded because you weren't looked at and I wasn't looked at as people. So they're not talking about us. So again, here comes that wall. I want to show you a video of the way the South Bronx is. This is again showing you the actual visual picture of what I was talking about, and what I'm talking about in the book, right? This book is very good in my belief to share with others to see that there is possibility, right? Because again, the antidote to hopelessness is hope, right? So, oh, too fast. Thank you. Can you sit down?
I was born and raised in the Bronx. At one time, the Bronx was a thriving community. But towards the end of the 60s, that started to change. Businesses moved out. Crime moved in. People were left with an overwhelming sense of fear and hopelessness.
No job opportunities, schools being closed down, shop owners leaving.
This is called the Bronx Fort Apache.
Just imagine World War II bombed out Berlin. It was just a war zone.
Arson, murder, robbery, rape, burglary. It was considered the murder capital of the United States. The worst ghetto in all of the United States.
At the epicenter of this crime wave was the NYPD's 41st Precinct, also known as Fort Apache.
The 401 was the busiest in the city in all levels of crime. Hands down, most dangerous squad in America. So pretty tough patrol grounds.
Okay. So, thank you. So again, I'm just laying the foundation of what it is that not only myself, but others who grew up in that area had to deal with. So let's talk about some of those blocks. One of the major blocks that everybody knows about is racism, right? This is how it is germinated in the minds of young people. I had a student tell me one time, besides being an author, I'm also an English teacher. One of my students said to me, because I give them so much writing assignments, who do I think they are white kids. And I said, what? I said, so you mean to tell me you think that white kids are smarter than you? But this is what I mean, right? So, racism. Mine started out from home, which is where most people start out, right? With my father, right? My father, who worked up until almost to the time he died, 17 years as a machinist. He wasn't a lazy man, he was a hard-working man, but he was a troubled man because of where he grew up, his background with his family, right? He was an alcoholic. And before I even get to that, I wanted to start out with particularly how black males are seen and how we see ourselves, right? Because in this excerpt, I want to read to you, again, the mindset, right, of how you start out defeated as a young person, right? So in my pursuit of obtaining success in America, I found it difficult to believe that my country living up to its ideals that my forefathers, like Mr. Adams, had written so eloquently about when describing the American dream. As I've gotten older and wiser and more educated about the world, I've seen the disparities when it comes to people of color. And when it comes to communities of color, I've also seen how a man's worth in America can be synonymous with how much monetary means a man can provide. If a man is unable to provide money for himself or the people he is responsible with, he cannot be a good man. Because again, in America, being in a capitalist society, if you are unable to provide, then you are worthless, particularly as a male, right? I would agree with the previous statement if we were speaking of men who were trying to improve his situation for himself or his family. Even in the Bible it states, 1 Timothy 5:8, certainly if anyone does not provide for those who are his own, especially for those who are members of his household, he has disowned his faith and is worse than a person without faith. But what about those men who have worked hard to follow their principles and strive to reach for the American dream every day? Those people like my father who tried to work hard. How does the American dream work for a black man who has been who's made strides, the systematic roadblocks of opportunity, like slavery, like Jim Crow, like redlining? As I stated before, in America, your worth as a man is measured more about what you own and less about who you are. So let's go to my foundation with my father. My father would have Marlboro cigarettes burning in an ashtray set on the table right next to him, along with his favorite scotch, Invenhouse. Anybody ever heard? I know probably you guys agree. Invenhouse is his favorite scotch. Right? I watched him deteriorate a little more every weekend as a reality of being unable to no longer financially take care of himself. His job where he was, anybody familiar with ad machines? Yeah. Right? Yeah. So that's what he did, right? He worked in a factory fixing ad machines. Once that became obsolete, that factory moved away. And so along with that became his worth as a man, becoming a dark reality, learning from him that manhood and money were two perpendicular lines that met in an intersection called self-worth. This was essentially erased when he lost his livelihood and would brag to me all the time how much more money he made when he was with my mother and when he had his job. So when his job left, so did his feelings of self-worth. When my father and mother broke up, my father used to always harp on that, the fact that he made more than my mother. Essentially, at the end of his life, it was my mother who had to take him in because he lost everything. Right? As a black man who grew up in South Carolina, this is my father, I didn't understand how fragile my father's self-worth was already. He was raised by my grandfather and mother who were both alcoholics. My father saw violence in his home that my grandmother and grandfather inflicted on one another. I know these circumstances had to help shape him as a man. I also know growing up in the era of Jim Crow and segregation also affected him as a kid. I remember our discussions on occasions about race in America. He seemed to feel satisfied at times when he talked about how blacks were number 2 and how whites were number 1. When we cover these subjects, it would at times, to me, sound like racial ranking. My father would say that we were ahead of Latinos and Asians when it came to our status in America. This was his thinking that would help shape my ideas of worth as a young man who happened to be black in America. So already, I'm starting out as number 2.
Now you'd be number 4, but that's old.
Yes. Yes. If that's the way I thought. Yeah. Absolutely. Right? Next block. Poverty. Right? So, I talk about a teacher, my social study teacher. Again, these are people who work in our community and who raise our children, who we look up to as mentors. I had a social study teacher who used to help me cheat on a test, her social studies test, right? So she'd make the essays, she'd make the class easier, but what we didn't understand is how hard she made our Delvo because she didn't learn a thing in that class, not one. I am sure she was well-intentioned. Maybe she didn't feel we were capable of learning the work because of the color of our skin or because of the surrounding community that we came from. Nonetheless, she was setting us up to fail. Right? This realization of second-class citizenship was also evident in my neighborhood. For all my problems in school, I was always a very articulate kid. I would have kids from my neighborhood ask me why I spoke so white. Because remember, we're number 2. Right? Right? You had that experience too, right? So how is it becoming that white kids have a monopoly on proper English? Because that's what it's called. It's not called white English. It's called proper English. Right? Right, but you have to be white to speak it. Right? This meant that I was using proper English and not slang, which is improper English by most educational institutions. The educational speech that I was speaking, or speaking white, as my peers put it again, in my mind gave whites number 1 ranking that my father spoke about, and my peers and I subliminally and consciously fed into subclass status. And then you go and you break it down in your family as well, right? So again, at the time that this was going on, I was a dropout. My sister, who I talk about in the book, was a crack drug dealer, right? So you got me and her who were like this at the time, by my brother who had a great job, my mother who of course doesn't want her children to behave this way. They were on one side, we on the other side. So I attribute that to anybody heard of Chris Rock?
Yeah.
That stand-up routine where he calls there's a difference between black people and niggas, right? So here's what I wrote about that. So my siblings and I were poor and black Americans who wanted to feel like we were worth something. And we do this all the time. When we watch the news, when we watch anything having to do with something, negative crime, what's the first thing we say? I hope he ain't black. Oh, he black. Right? Right? So we already separate. We don't want to be like him because he is, he is presenting that stereotype, or she. He's embarrassing all of us. There's a saying that when one of us walk in the room, we all go with you. Right? So if you are doing something negative as a black person, right, you are a poor example for all of us, right? So we don't want you to represent us. So this is what I was talking about. In the place of the time we didn't feel like we cared about ourselves, our school made us feel this way, our police made us feel this way, and people who call us neighbors at times seemed like they didn't care about us or themselves, as violence and times plagued my community. This fact led to division in my community, as well as my family. It was the division that Chris Rock talked about. in his 90s stand-up routine in HBO called Bringing the Pain. In the routine, Rock talked about the difference between niggas and black people. The niggas are the people who embody all the negative stereotypes placed on black people by the system of white supremacy, which most black people feel is detrimental to upstanding black folks who want to be seen in a more positive light. What we don't talk about is that you can never reach that positive in a white supremacy society. You will never reach it because I automatically, particularly outside of that race, if I have a negative view of you, doesn't matter what you do.
Because you'll never be white.
Right. You'll never be white. Exactly. Right? So my sister and I were the niggers of the family, and I don't think that either of us were proud that we looked at this way by our family members. In fact, I felt like we both wanted better for ourselves. My sister wanted to be a good mother to her kids, though she did it in unconventional ways. I wanted to be more successful like my hip-hop heroes that I saw on TV and listened to on the radio. My mother didn't feel optimistic about either of us. My brother was just glad we looked better. He looked better than we did. Right?
Was he old?
Yeah, he was old. Opportunity and violence. Third block. Right? So, I talk about, besides my family, also the community and people that I care about a lot, particularly a person in my life who was dealing with domestic violence. In this particular portion of the book, chapter 7, I talk about an incident of domestic violence. I want to get in between them, but I could. But June lunged at Malika. He swung his back hand at her, just grazing her face. He backed her up into the kids' bedroom against the wall. I was now in the doorway of the kids' bedroom. I saw their younger daughter screaming at her father to stop. The two oldest children just sat in the corner of their room crying, though everyone else seemed in distress. I felt completely calm. My main goal was to get Malika out of this situation. I haven't figured out how to do that. I wasn't sure if I should jump him from behind or what. I wasn't sure whether he had a gun on him because I knew he liked to walk around with one. So I risked getting shot or getting Malika or the kids getting shot. As those thoughts ran through my head, I heard Malika say to Majun, "Why would you do this in front of your kids?" This seemed to temporarily snap him out of his rage because he backed away from Malika and right past where I was standing. As he walked back into the living room where everyone else was standing, Malika also started to walk out of the room. She tried to walk past me, but I stood in front of her, extending my arm to stop her from walking behind Majun. Malika then started to yell at Majun again. She told him she wanted him to get the hell out. He turned back toward where Malika and I were standing and began reaching into a pouch he had strapped to him. He then pulled out a gun and pointed in my and Malika's direction. And the rest you have to buy the book. You see how I did that? Right? That's why I spend so much time marketing and things like that. Any questions? And Sister Shania wants me to answer questions about marketing.
Yeah, I want to answer
anything.
a question,
Yeah.
definitely. So, you said the name of the book was Build It and They Won't Come, right?
Build It, but they ain't coming. So that's a play on. Anybody ever saw that film, Field of Dreams?
Yeah, if you build it, they will come.
So the reason
So I did the opposite.
reason that made me ask that question is because at one time I had a client. I never heard of Tesla cars,
Yeah.
and as soon as he told me about it, I started seeing it all the time. But I noticed they did no marketing for Tesla, and
Right.
Tesla outsold all these cars. So the question to you is, how did they do it?
So you said, how did Tesla do it?
Yeah.
Well,
think
I mean,
I think it was 2016. They sold more cars with no marketing. I never seen not one commercial for
I
Tesla.
don't believe
Would
that.
probably help
Word of
you
mouth.
with that.
Word of
Yeah.
mouth.
So I don't believe that they did no marketing.
But I never seen a commercial
You may
for
not have been
Tesla.
aware of it. So it's like think about the Popeyes chicken sandwich, right? Anybody familiar with how the Popeye chicken sandwich ballooned into this crazy phenomenon, right? And it started all on social media. They started doing these games like, our chicken sandwich, they kind of did with Chick-fil-A. This is the way Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, this is the way a Popeye chicken sandwiches. And people just kind of took it, and social media is nothing but an electronic word of mouth anyway. They just took it and from memes and sharing, and it just ballooned into this craziness. And I say all that to say that no matter what it is that you do, you have to make it known and communicate with those people who are interested about what you do on a regular basis.
Within a certain audience, right?
A certain audience.
Okay.
Not everybody's your audience, but you have to understand your audience, right? There's certain people, and I always say even inside the black community, who will not buy anything from me. I'm very clear on that, right? I know more than likely who will buy something from me, just based on education, based on where they're from, what's their experience, because I spent so much time kind of delving and going over this and researching it and thinking about it and who I've seen in the past buy things from me as opposed to others. So people think, well, you're black, and somebody black should buy something from you. Not necessarily, right? But the thing is, you have to know that, right? So not to waste your time. It's just like when you're in this room. This room is full of marketing and promotional opportunity. You're going to walk around, as I'm hoping that most of you will do, and hand out a card. And I could tell you, as somebody experienced, if I talk to somebody, I know right away if they're my person. I know that right away, right? Just by a couple of things that they say, right? So like when I was in marketing and I go into a networking room, I dealt in marketing, content, and different things like that. So if I come to this young lady, how are you, ma'am? Do you have a website? No. Okay, so I'm gonna move over here. I knew right away.
I don't have one.
Right away, that answer right there?
I don't have one.
Right? So I move over here. But if you say yes,
I don't have one.
you're my person. Right? Do you use social media? No. I had one time a lady told me, I said, so you on Facebook? What's Facebook? All right, have a nice night. Thank you, nice meeting you. Right? So I move on.
So
Right?
how do you define your audience? I'm hearing you say who's not your audience. How do you define your audience for yourself?
Right. So in your business, you want to define your audience just like you would define your friends.
Let me help
Right? There is a. What is this? There is a criteria that you have with the people that you surround yourself by. There's certain things that you relate to. There's certain things, like I said, like what is your business?
I'm an artist and astrologer.
An artist and astrologer. There's some people who astrology, what? Right? So some of the people in here might be into some of that because you have a spiritual audience, right? So, but if you went down to maybe downtown on 42nd Street with, a buttoned up tie, maybe not, right? So it's about you mapping out what it is that this person looks like, feels like, smells like. So first of all, you want to start off with people who have bought from you in the past, right? So who are they? What are they like? What is their education like? Where do they go and frequent and find information, right? And that's how you start building, right? And the more you know about that audience, the better it is that you communicate with them. You know where they hang out. You know what it is that, how they gain their information. They may not be social media people. They may be more newsletter people, right? They may be more flyer people, right? It's not you saying, well, I'm too sophisticated to do that, but if that's the way they communicate, that's the way you gotta communicate.
If you want to, it's a choice.
Right, well, that's not so much, it's when, if you want, the choice is, I wanna make money.
Be successful.
Right, and be successful. Because if flyers is the way that, Sister Jones, usually gets her information, if you're on social media, then you're not communicating with Sister Jones, particularly if Sister Jones has bought from you on a frequent basis. So guess what? I'm making flyers. Yes.
You bring up a good point when it comes to us pre-media people.
Yes.
because as you said, these days, you know, people are Instagramming and whatever else they're doing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm proud that I actually know how to get on Facebook at this point.
Yeah.
My question is, that
Yeah.
you're right, a lot of getting your name out there now,
Right.
you know, is having a website, being on Instagram, doing all these things.
Right.
People like myself who, you know, I'm from the time when the phones were on the wall.
Yeah.
And stuff.
You know, when it's down in there. Yeah, I remember.
And we were high tech, but it became a push button.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like myself,
Yeah.
where I mean, I'm proud, I actually can recognize the Instagram signature thing. How to use it
Yeah.
and all that other thing. If you want to get your name out there and you're from that generation,
Yes.
if you can't find Rent a Kid someplace to help you, how can you kind of expand your repertoire
Right.
so that you know how to utilize these things to get your name out of it, since, as you said, there's very few of us Miss Joneses walking around with flyers anymore.
Yeah.
And people like yourself won't talk to us because we...
I didn't want to, look, that's not true. I have done this plenty of
I'm
times.
just saying, but
Yeah.
how do we up our game so we're part of the
Yeah, so the
network?
one thing I would say to start with, you want to educate yourself. You are obviously a articulate, educated woman who understands the need for education, right? So this is just like going to school with anything else,
Where
right?
do you go to?
So Small Business Administration,
Oh, okay.
SBS, they always give free classes on stuff like this,
Libraries.
continuously. And then, once you get a little bit more comfortable, right? Maybe YouTube teaches you about everything. You want to say something?
Yeah, and on top of what you're saying, it took me a long time, like you, to, mine was through word of mouth. But when I started using social media, what I noticed, I said, I'm not going to have the platform use me. I'm going to use the platform the way I designed it.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So a lot of times we might have got turned off because you see everybody putting stuff, I'm going to the bathroom, I'm having this food. That's the way they want to use it. But I realized that, like you said, there's a market and there's a conversation and it depends on the environment that you go into. I got millennials who were good on Instagram and they're great on how to do different technical things. Sit down with them, give them a service, and they'll show you. That's how someone showed me, they got me going on Instagram. I said, okay, I can take it from here. Because you are smart, you know how to educate, and it's a conversation to have. Because, and going back to your conversation, is when you go to this church, I was at a church function, and I have a sister that does chakra readings. I said, you know, you can't come here talking about chakra readings in this church.
Right.
That's right.
But you do consultation for a diet. Now, they will listen to that.
Yes. You have to
So
know your
each
audience.
environment, you got to know your environment, like you know your product, and know what lines up with each other.
Yeah, and just kind of elaborate on that. Let's not get mixed up with thinking millennials know everything. Because I teach millennials.
Some of them.
Right? And I can tell you, I got two of them back there. So I teach millennials, and I can tell you a lot of them don't even understand the power of this. Right? They know how to post something. Right? Like you said, you know, I'm eating a turkey sandwich, you know, and this is what's on it. But they don't know how to say, well, I'm eating this turkey sandwich by Petridge Farms, go buy one. And then like 20 people go buy it. That's different. Right? And then I can tell you how the way I use social media. Like, for instance, if I were to sit down with you and show you how I do it, like, so I'm an author, right? So the people I follow are people who run book clubs, bookstores, right? African American organizations, particularly African American organizations with educated people, because I know my market. I don't want to follow Joe Schmo who's got his shirt off and showing his chest and his stomach muscles. How's that helping me? Right? That doesn't help me, right? So I want to be connected with the people where I send somebody, like I just got my books put into a bookstore in Baltimore, just opened up. Another one in Philly, right? Because I started following them on Instagram. Hey, by the way, here's where my book is. Here's my my press release. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, send you your books. We want to, we need you here. When you gonna come out and do a book signing? Because I know who I need to talk to, right? I know who my market is, right? And that's the same thing you do with whether you're doing astrology or whatever else. There are certain people. If you put a search in on Instagram, on Facebook, and you look up astrology, I guarantee you'll find some groups. And that's what you want to be a part of, right? Yes.
Because when you said that, did you understand what he meant by your profile of your market and how to identify that?
I was asking about how he defines his audience.
Yeah.
Because his approach was, do you have a website? No, I'm moving on.
Mm-hmm.
So I was receiving it kind of in the negative. So I was interested in real time how he did it. However, I satisfied myself with his response.
Did I answer your question?
No, you didn't.
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
But it's all right.
Can I help you though real quick?
Go ahead.
Okay. Because I taught marketing when we didn't have Facebook and Instagram and all of that. I started a newspaper in 1982 where we was passing out flyers, right?
Yeah.
And what I learned about marketing had to do with looking at people in terms of groups. There's groups of people who like African sensitive, and there's groups of people that like curls, and there's groups of people who like big dangling hip hop type. Okay. So for every single group, you stop and you analyze where do the people who like these different types of things, what do they eat, where do they hang out, what might their income range be, where do they live, and when you start studying people from that analysis of what makes this group different from this group and this group,
Bless you.
then you begin to define your market.
Yeah.
What I found out with me, because I teach breakfast, everybody breathes, I was thinking I could just market to everybody.
So everybody.
And I found out they was taking me way too much money.
Yes.
And I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And people still, there's a group of people who understand what I'm doing, but I had to narrow my focus to now the people who breathe, and now I'm focusing directly on that group of people, and I'm studying those people,
Right.
and it has totally made my business shift. It really does.
Yeah.
So that's what he means by you
Yes.
got to really, it's like a bullseye.
Yeah.
There's the target in the middle, then the
Yeah.
next
Yeah, niche
circle
market.
is so
Perfect,
many points, and then the next circle is so many more points, and then it's this wide, big circle at the end with this big, generalized group of people. And most of us, when we're trying to market, we are appealing to the generalized group of people.
Right.
And then you're not an expert.
Yeah.
Then you're not a specialist trying to appeal to them.
And that's what I was trying to say when, I wasn't trying to be rude to the young lady. I was trying to demonstrate what I mean by, because let's take it real simple. How much does a business card cost you on Vistaprint? Like say a group of 300.
About $20.
$20. About $20, right?
500.
So let's just range this between about $25, maybe $30 or so, right? So you're gonna go to like 10, 20 of these events. Let's just say, if you're somebody serious about your business, you got to go out there and hustle. That means you're gonna be passing out cards. Now, if I'm on a budget, as far as my business, how many of those cards can I just hand out? Because again, once they're gone, I have to buy more, right? And that's something that could be taken from something else. And if I can create from that card handing to this young lady, and that $20 turns into $100 because that's my customer, then that's who I need to be talking to. If this young lady, like I said, I was in marketing. Now it's nothing, she may be totally successful in whatever she does. Right? But she's not going to be interested 9 times out of 10 in what I do because she doesn't even have the website. Right? She doesn't even have, maybe not use social media. That's what I do. So again, great speaking to you, but I need to talk to somebody who, that's what they do. That's how they market. They're gonna say, I need this guy because I do this anyway. I just need to do it better. That's all I was saying.
Someone who fits your.
Right.
Well, what would you be
Well,
interested
I
in?
find business cards are not all that effective. And I've been practicing for 40-something years.
Right.
I probably have received telephone calls from my business cards maybe one time.
This is what I'm saying. That's my point.
I get my clients from people who refer me.
Right.
That's what
Right.
social media
And
is.
what
Right.
I do-
That's what social media
and what
is.
I do is rather than ask people for rather than give my business card,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm working the room, which I'm not today, I'm to be with you, I would get their information.
Right.
And because you cannot always, everybody, I mean, for what I do, a lot of people can benefit. So my power is in getting their number, and it
Right.
doesn't have to be on a fancy card.
But
I
even
can write
in
it
that, my example was if I gave this card to this young lady here, and she goes and talks to 10 other people who are interested in the same thing, I've already multiplied that one interaction, right? Because even if she don't, maybe that other 9 will, right? Because she is in that circle who are interested in what I do, right? It's the same thing with the brother said going to the church. So you go in there and say, look, astrology, and they go, whoop,
No, that's not happening.
right?
It's not
You
happening.
know, also we look at what time it is too. Most of us have cell phones. So they have on your cell phone when you can scan someone's card right into their phone. So in today's tech, you could be creative. Like we was talking about creative ways of getting that beamer, right? There's creative ways. So say you're on a budget, like the brother said, and you said, I have 200 cards. So for the person that doesn't, maybe is on the fence, I said, well, scan my card, or take a picture of my card. This way, I still have my card, and she has the number in her phone.
Yeah.
This is just a creative way without giving out cards to maybe not so potential clients, and you can still keep your card.
My point is about whether it's cards, social media, or anything, it's maximizing. That's just another form of promotion. A business card is a form of promotion. Social media is a form of promotion and advertising. It's if that's the way you use it. But in that tool, you want to maximize your use of it. So even when we come, I use the business card because it's something simple that we can all connect with. You know, and that's something you're probably going to do in here, which is I give you a card, and you go, okay, great. But when I talk to you, if you're not my person, I should already know this, right? And it's nothing against you, right? It's just me knowing who it is that's going to, somewhere down the line, utilize this or tell somebody else because they're in that same network, right? Oh, well, maybe you can't, but hey, I got like 20 friends that maybe want to use you, so I'm going to recommend you. Right? So that card has just become a profit. That's what you want your card, your social media, your website to be tools of maximizing your profits margins. Right? You wanted to maximize your word of mouth. Right? She became my word of mouth. She became one of my salespeople. Right? Because she was like, wow, yeah. So I'm going to go tell this one, that one. Right? Even if I don't use it. Now I might still use it.
And for her question, they are flyer people.
Yes, that's why I still said.
You can still maybe, once you've identified your audience, that might be your flyer.
Yeah, because you go on social media and they go, huh? I don't use that. But here's a flyer. Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to give it to my church group. I'm going to give it to my men's group. I'm going to put it on the bulletin board.
That's what I'm saying, about what is related
Right.
to the internet, then you have to know.
Yeah, but if you're, like you said, if your audience has moved to social media and you still handing out flyers, that's a problem, right? You have to know this, that they have transitioned. We don't use that anymore. We use Facebook. We got a Facebook group on astrology, right? We got an Instagram. You know, we on Instagram talking about astrology. All this stuff is happening. Right now, you see my wife holding up that phone? Right? So she's not holding up that phone because she's looking at her beautiful self. She is running right? A live Facebook feed of me talking to the people who have bought from me, who know what I do, right? So we keep connected.
Why did you turn to me? No.
Yes.
And if brothers like you are not writing things that our students speaks their truth, so that somebody is validating the fact that, yes, we have been given messages to be number two.
Yes.
I've had students, especially boys, who are brilliant, but they would dummy down
Yes.
so they would fit in. I know even when I was growing up, you know, back in the dark ages, it was the same thing. You get good grades, oh, you must think you white.
Oh, you think you're better than us.
Better. And I'm like, okay, so to be intelligent means you have to be white?
Right.
You know, so I got smart people in my family, they might think they white sometimes, but they're not. But I thank you because, especially coming from a brother,
Yeah.
particularly since it's not okay to be smart and black, period, but especially when you're male.
Yes.
Then you must be gay, you must be this, you
Yes.
must be that. So to have someone to be able to write something, I think the greatest tragedy is this type of book should be in all the schools.
Yeah.
As readings for our middle school kids as well as our high school children.
Right.
But I know they have their own politics.
Yeah.
But I think even within our group or other groups, if anybody has connections to schools, I know also there's, in April, a lot of the independent schools come together in DC for the Uncopia conference.
Yes.
And a lot of times brothers and sisters who write books like this come and they network there. So I don't know if you're aware of that group, but if not, I'll give you the
Oh yeah, I would look forward to that, yes. And this is why I come to these kind of groups and book clubs and different things of that nature, particularly with this kind of audience, because I want, besides, you know, it's nice to make money, but I didn't write it just to make money. One of my students had actually bought my book, who I teach in the Yonkers school system. And she bought my book, and it was probably one of the proudest moments because she totally got what it is that I was trying to do, right? And that's the cherry, you know, on top of the ice cream, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, it's starting to make that momentum. And I would hope that you guys, some of you who will buy the book, will go and share it with others. And that's how it spreads, right? And then it becomes ours, right? We started it, right? We started to put it out. It's no longer mine. I put it out to the world and for you guys to share it with others. So more and more people can get this message. So the next kid that grows up like me will maybe see this and go, well, he did it. Why can't I?
Exactly.
Right? And I thank you.
Breath work. We learn how to breathe. The ritual of reconciliation and breath cycles for racial, diverse, and gender healing. In 2004, she also formed and became the CEO of Positive Energy Works, a woman-owned wellness business for stress, trauma, and relaxation management. She's the author of Applied Methodology, Power of Breath, Why the Breath Has So Much Power with Asthma Guide for Children, and Black Love Book. Currently, she has Breathe with millions worldwide on radio, TV, and print, by internet, on stage, in groups, and in private practice, notably on the Steve Harvey Morning Show and Ronald Martin's News Hour. As a sound healer and composer, she performs with her husband, featured as Herb Love Tune of the Crew. breath training materials, relaxation and music to breath by currently and co-host producer Breathworks Online International webcast. She is also renowned as a founder of Black Love Day, February 13th, co-created in 1973, which is stewarded by her organization, African American Holiday Association. Almost. An author, speaker, storyteller, she focuses on cultural diversity, holistic health, social justice, race and gender equity, which is embodied in her Keepers of the Culture series of books, plays, videos, and CDs, whereby she further uses methodologies to clear trauma and generational healing. In her upcoming book and play entitled Stolen, as degree counselor and community organizer, she served as a life coach and has been in leadership in many movements. Now she is fostering a breath movement to help you to relax, to stay productive and peaceful in these reactionary times, and to reawaken and reconcile our diversities, empower us to our greatness despite these stressful polarities. Amayo.
Thank you. Okay. I'm gonna have to turn that down. That's all right. First and foremost, I am very loud, so I don't really have to have a mic. I've learned how to use my breathing pretty well. I want to give praise and honor to the Most High. I am so grateful to be able to be here through the grace of God. I've been extremely blessed by the grace and mercy. I think you mentioned I've been addicted and I've been dragged down the street and abused and choked, and brother talked about his alcoholic father, my father's alcoholic also. And I remember early on that a lot of times I held my breath, and I didn't know why I was holding my breath until I had gone to college. I had married a high school sweetheart. We went overseas, got married. Both of us was running away from home from my parents, right? And when we got overseas, both of us started smoking and using drugs and dropping pills, right? Because there was a part of us, both of us, that was numb. It was totally stuck in our bodies. We were frozen in fear and trauma. And I didn't have any idea how that would translate until when we got back home and I went to college and got my degree in human services. And I was running around helping everybody else with African-centered education. I was healing and holding the world up. I was in a Million Man March, Million Woman March, everybody's march. I was part of the leadership of everybody's group. Like, I was always helping somebody, always doing somebody else, but at the same time, I kept sneaking in the back room and I was drinking and drugging. And I had to really look at myself and say, what is it about me that I know I'm not doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing? Presenting in front of students, telling about their African-centered culture, and at the same time, I'm abusing myself. Now, I stand before any group and say, I had a lot of fun drinking and drugging too. I did some of my most productive work artistically. I love the idea of my brain being able to come into realms that I couldn't achieve in a normalized state. But I also didn't like the day afters a lot of times. I didn't like some of the ways in which it took me in paths that really I knew I didn't need to be in. And then I kept attracting brothers who were also in very dangerous paths. So I was attracting people, addicts in my life, who was showing me the mirror that I was an addicted person. And it was still, again, years later, when I began to find a correlation between me holding my breath. And it came from learning that every time I would be in pain and trauma and stress, I started watching, okay, everybody holding their breath. And then, of course, I was in the African culture and history, so I started thinking about, man, can you imagine all them people being dragged across the shores against their will, and how many of them was holding their breath in pain and trauma, being beat upon, and they couldn't scream, they couldn't cry, they couldn't holler, so all they could do was hold their breath. Right. And then I started looking at the correlation about my people today having so much ill health, so much repressed illnesses, mental health issues, high blood pressure, all of the ways in which the manifestation of emotional ill health affects how we hold on to pain, and how pain and trauma will keep showing up, because pain and trauma ain't nothing but energy, and energy doesn't go away. Energy stays stuck in your body. So I began to look at me, and I began to look at my people, and I began to look at all of the challenges we have with health. And because I was taking all these courses all along those years, I was Transcendental Meditation 1970, Tai Chi in 72, Shiatsu, Reiki. I was doing everything related around breath and energy healing, right? But I was and I was still running the back on snorting cocaine. So I was doing radio shows, and I'd be all talking about culture and health and healing. I had a newspaper, I said, 1982, called Positive Energy. It was a forerunner to, a lot of the health and healing community-based publications in D.C. Went for 9 years. So I was running around doing all that work. But I was still running around not taking care of me.
Right.
So, that's a long story. I've written about it in 2 of my books. First husband ended up dying. My son was killed. My son gave me the mirror of what really life is. And that life related to the fact that he had fallen. He got hit over the head and fell and couldn't breathe. And the doctors told us that they could keep him on the machine forever and he would have life, but he wouldn't have life. He would be living on the machine, but he would not have life. And so we decided to let him go home. That aha moment of the difference between real life that relates to the way you breathe became really my real aha moment. And from that point on, I began to see breath very differently. I began to really study, why do I hold my breath to the point sometimes I feel like I'm about to pass out? And it was about 5 to 6 years after Rashid, we took him off the machine, we let him go home. We gave him 5 of his body parts to other people, so Rashid does live in those people. But we decided to let him go home because we felt like, he had done a lot of work in 17 years, and that, it was clear we did not want him to not have real full life. But I began to start noticing people walking down the street like this. And I began to see a lot of my students that were working in these African-centered schools, the brothers talking about the low self-esteem. I began to see that half the time when we didn't speak up, it was because we was mumbling, because we was holding and repressing our breathing. And the more and more I looked at the correlations, I began to see the common denominator that people have that we need to change and grow was simply the way that we breathe. And the revelation that started with Rashid expanded into me taking my class in about 1995, I guess it was right after the Million Man March, I think. And by then, the second experience of my father now, he on this machine, right? And I'm mad at him, I'm looking at him, and I'm saying, I said, you got to go home, But at the same time, I'm thinking, I love this man, but I didn't like this man, and I couldn't understand what was the issue. And it was until, they pulled the plug that I began to realize that, hey, look, it's something about this holding my breath that has to do with my father. And I don't know what it is. Well, I was able to go to a workshop about 2 months after his death. And in that workshop, the revelation that I had been abused by my father came flooding forward. I breathed in a certain way that was totally different from any of the other breath techniques I had taken. And this particular breath technique, I want to share with you all today if you all are interested. Yes, okay. This breath technique opens up the subconscious memory of all your stuff that you repress.
Make sure you stay here and keep us up.
Oh, right. So this holding on our breath is not necessarily a conscious thing. A lot of it just has to do with, hey, look, we're in so much pain that the brain says, I can't deal with this crap. And I know what to do to stop you from being in pain. I hold your breathing. There's a brain stem. Everybody turn to the back and take your finger, and right here where your neck bends up right towards your skull, there's a very sensitive spot there called the brain stem. That's your last place where your breathing will end. This is where the reptilian part of our brain is. If you can feel it, for some of us it's very sensitive. That means that you're probably overgiving, overextending yourself, okay? In pain. Haven't been able to release all of your real pain. Well, that brain stem is also what they call the reptilian part of us. The first thing we do, we come into the world, we breathe, right? The last thing we do, we'll take our last breath. And that last breath comes from that reptilian part of our brain, right? And so I started realizing, hey, look, I'm like, really, I found that out. And I said, this thing is sensitive as all get out. And when I went to this particular session, we began to do the breathing technique that opened up that part of our brain. It opens up the subconscious area in which we stuff and store the pains because we're not ready to deal with it. And as I did this breathing technique, I screamed and tossed and cried and yelled, and I didn't know who I was yelling at. And after about the second session, I was yelling at my father. My father, from the time I was like 8 to about 14, had been coming into my room touching me very inappropriately, right? And since our subconscious is formed from age 1 to about 7, a whole lot of the stuff that young people are regurgitating is literally stuck there. So I remember my dad called me blue juice, he called me names, he talked about I was always tiny and skinny, he had all these little funny little names for me. He talked about my color. He talked about a lot of things I saw with my mother. My mother ended up getting breast cancer. So I started seeing that correlation. My father was abusing everybody verbally, but he had been abused too.
Himself, yeah.
Yeah, hurt people. Right, his father had been an alcoholic. So the generational trauma that we as a people have experienced. What we're putting into the hands of our children today that's not helping them grow beyond some of that pain and trauma. It's really continuing to re-traumatize them. So our goal is that we have to begin to do the work ourselves, and I started doing the work. I had to forgive my dad. But first, I had to forgive me. I had to get into the understanding that, look, I was just sitting there. And this pain that had turned into years of depression in which I was holding my breath the whole time. The more I began to breathe, the more I was able to release, the more I was able to let go of the pain and the trauma, and the easier it was for me to forgive my dad. And once I forgave my dad and I forgave me, and I started breathing efficiently again, I started taking this all over the world. Because I saw and I realized that the only way I think we made it across those shores is that we had to find a way to breathe. And the way we breathe, we would hum, we would sing, we would moan. Brothers and sisters, that's the way we made it across those shores. Because if we talked to each other, then they would know that we were trying to conspire. And so we had to come up with new secret ways on how to release the trauma and the pain. And what did we do? We got here and, we were humming them fields, we hum, we sang. We use our own vocal transformative high frequency. Everybody's voice It's their highest frequency. So we didn't have the tools, right? We had to use our own internal tools. And I found that our breathing, in the form that it comes in, screaming, crying, yelling, moaning, humming, however way we fully. We release the trauma, we release the pain. So I know I don't have that much time. I do a 16-hour course in certifying people in how to use breathing techniques, concepts, how to use oxygen, how to put it all together to use the system on an everyday basis, right? Because we don't want people to just be gurus and they only hum and hum, you know. You got to go up and go to the suit, you know, you got to get suited up for the gym in order to experience yoga. No, we want to have people have minute-to-minute yoga, minute to second yoga, right? Because in our society, we experience up to 52 or more stresses, they say, a day. So let's have you all do a little breathing. Okay?
Yes.
We've been sitting. Promise I won't take long. Make this time valuable for you. Everybody put everything off your lap. But if you can, if you turn that back on, I guess.
Yes.
So these techniques are just some of the beginning techniques of what's called optimal life breathology. We started with relearning how to breathe. I had to really retrain myself how to breathe again. And we've been blessed. We've been able to train millions of people on radio, TV, and print. The first thing I want everybody to do before we get started, I simply want you to open your hands up. And I want you to simply open the mouth and just, Good. Now this time I want you to inhale and lift your hands up. Hold your hands up. I want you to lift one arm up higher. Okay, stretch the other arm higher, good. And then stretch again, that arm higher. Good, and another one a little bit higher, good. And now go Good. Now let's try one more. Let's inhale in again. And as we're inhaling, I want you to lift that arm up again really high. This time I want you to arch your back just a little bit, okay? I want you to really reach out there, wave to your ancestors. Say, how you doing, Uncle Joe? How you doing, Aunt Susan? Right, good. Hey, some of them ancestors might be right here. Say, how you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing, Dad? How you doing? And some of them ancestors are down there on the ground. How you doing?
How you doing?
Really wave to. These are stress busters. Now, as we're down here waving to our ancestors, just lift them up. Because they have helped us, and they have made it so easy for us to do the work that we are able to do. Let's lift them up to the heavens, and as we get there, let's inhale, really way, lifting them way up, and now as we exhale, okay, I don't want you to blow out like a whistle. Don't puck up your lips, just and now let's bend down a little bit. Just a little bit. And we're going to sniff up air. Here we go. And lift your head up. And when you get all the way to the top, hold it. And now open the mouth and go. And now bend forward, going down again. Now we're going to open up. This sniffing is waking up the brain. Here we go. Very good. Let the head go way back. Open the mouth up and go. Very good. And just let the head go down real slow and gentle. And now inhale again up and then sniff up. Let the head drop all the way back. Like you're letting all your burdens go. Good. And now really release. Good. Caught the yarn. See you catching it? Yeah, you caught the yarn. Right. Okay, that's what I want y'all to do. What we just did is we open up our air passageway. When you first wake up, don't jump up out of bed and start trying to execute the world. She caught the yarn too. I see y'all. This is a game we play. Who's catching the yarn? So what we did, we opened up the air passage by yawning and stretching, right? And pulling breath all the way up and inhaling out with concaving. The body knows when the exhale is supposed to occur. We're pushing air out and we're inhaling back up again, okay? Now what we want to do, I want everybody to stand up.
Yes, yes.
So we do that first thing in the morning when you first wake up. Okay, now we're up. Okay, let's move the air. We're going to circulate all that oxygen we done moved around. So this is called a jiggle. So we're just going to jiggle a little. Yeah, jiggle. There you go. This is T-com, really. But I call it the jiggle. So we're going to jiggle it around. Good. So we're going to jiggle the head. Good. Yeah, there you go. Good jiggle. We're going to jiggle the head, right? We're going to jiggle the shoulders. Good. She caught the yarn. I see you over there. Jiggle the shoulders. Right? Jiggle the chest. Okay. I don't care what's on that chest. Okay. Jiggle the belly. Jiggle the belly. Good. Okay. Don't forget the butt. Jiggle the butt. Gotta do the butt. Gotta do the butt. Gotta do the butt. Good. Jiggle them legs. Come on. Let's do Beyonce style. Yeah. Jiggle the legs. Okay. 68, if I can do this, y'all can do this too now. Okay, jiggle the legs. Jiggle them feet. Jiggle them feet. Good, 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 good. Now, everybody for a minute. Stop a minute again. Inhale in. Bring it all the way up. You can bring your arms way up. Stretch. Bend back a little bit. And now release. Good, good. So we done jiggled. Good, good, good. Now, let's have you all, let me see. Okay, we're going to do a fast breath, all right? Everybody ready? Bend your legs at the knees. Okay? Here we go. We're going to do a high breath. We're going to go. Good. Stop a minute and feel all the energy we done generated. Inhale again. And now, good. Inhale again. Exhale. Very good. One of the techniques that we don't know is breathing is something we do every single day.
Yes, we do.
We open our mouth up and we simply allow ourselves to laugh. So I want you to do what is called fake it until you make it. I want you to open your mouth up and I want you to make yourself laugh. I want you to give yourself a good belly laugh. I want you to look at somebody, turn to them. It's hard not to. Because laughter becomes a therapeutic breathing tool. If you can breathe for 10 minutes, It gives you an aerobic exercise that's equal to 30 minutes of exercising, inhaling and exhaling. Right here, the diaphragm.
With music?
Nope, we don't need music. So, we're going to see if we can laugh for at least 1 minute.
Got it.
Ready, set, go. Now sometimes you can't laugh out loud. So if you're in the house and you want to breathe deeper, you want to make yourself laugh. So you can't laugh out loud. So you can laugh in quiet.
Wow.
Let's have everybody sit down.
That was a workout.
Okay. So breathing becomes an aerobic exercise. Breathing does so many different things. There was no way, shape, or form I could sit up here and try to even tell you all the benefits. I gave a lot of people my flyer.
Yes, and that one?
So if you don't have one, it tells you about 21 different breathing exercises and benefits of breathing, okay? Breathing is the bomb. If we don't breathe, we don't have life. Okay, let me just summarize it like that. I go into a health fair and I say, everything in this room is important, but if you don't have the breath, you don't have any of this, right? So I want everyone to stop just a minute, and we're going to check the way you're breathing. And we're going to do a little bit of subconscious work with one breath technique, which is called conscious connected breathing. There's no pause in between. It connects the inhale with the exhale with the inhale. It may bring up some tears. It may bring up some old stuff. We have sessions where people are visited by ancestors. We have sessions where people give voices from the past. They do some very deep work in these sessions. A 45-minute session is equal to 2.5 years of talking out things with a therapist, which, like the sister said, a lot of times you don't even know what it is hurting you and you're so in pain with, which was my issue for years. I was carrying around all this pain. She okay? You okay?
I'm fine.
Okay, make sure.
I just broke muscle laughing.
Exercise,
Okay. Well, my sister's a certified breathologist, so she got you over there, right? Yes. Leon was a certified breathologist. She's one of the New York folks. Okay, so let's all check our breathing, but we're going to do it first with the conscious connected breath. So, Barbara, if you...
Yes,
That's going to be challenging. Turn on number 1 if you can. Okay. So this breath is it's an open mouth breath technique. Queen of Fu does fire breath, which is, okay, so we teach that as one of the breath techniques in Ultimate Life Breathology. Okay, every breath technique that we work with has a different application for a different need. The more you work with breath, the more you'll find which technique you need to use for whatever the need is. So fire breath is excellent if you go outside and you're cold, you want to warm up your body, or if you're trying to get that wonderful feeling with your man or your lady, a fire breath turns up all your private parts. So that's a great breath technique for that. But this breath technique, this is conscious connected breath. It's in and out, in and out, in and out. You're not snapping the belly, okay? Instead, it's gentle, it's connecting in, and then before you finish that breath, you're releasing, picking it back up, releasing. I want you to imagine an ocean wave, like the water comes on the shore and then that shh, shh, shh. That's where I want you to feel and sense your breathing, okay? So everyone close their eyes. We're going to do about 20 of those. This is going to generate a lot of energy. You may feel tingling. If you feel cramping anywhere, it means that some of those emotional stress blocks are blocking the ability for the oxygen to run freely through your bloodstream, as Sister was saying. Okay, so breathing techniques do wonders to open up all of the energy blocks, stuck emotions, as well as physically rejuvenate the body. Everything that the body needs comes from the nutrition of our having oxygen in our body. So simply, this is called form number 1. Put one hand on your chest. Optimal life breathology, form number 1. Take the thumb of the opposite hand and connect it right there to your belly button. And then put the other 4 fingers just below your belly, like you're loving and hugging your belly. The people who are standing up, I highly recommend that you sit down with this technique because it can make you very dizzy, okay? Especially if you really put your all into it, okay? Yeah, okay. And it's open mouth, so you're getting a lot of oxygen in. Okay, so let us begin on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.